I'm Sigfús Magnússon from Men&Mice, and I'm going to show you the immediate return on investment from Micetro. So I am going to switch to a deployment of Micetro here. This is a deployment of Micetro, and what I've done in a previous video was to deploy Micetro in a pretty straightforward environment with Microsoft DNS DHCP, with some bind servers, with a Kia server, and what you can do from the get-go is to delegate access to different objects in Micetro. So you can bring in your Active Directory groups and specify what kind of access they have in the tool. But you can also do some troubleshooting really easily with the product to identify issues that have been that are in the environment. One issue, for example, might be that we have scenarios where customers think that they have, for example, all the DHCP scopes in a failover. So it is quite difficult to determine and figure out in a large environment, especially if all the scopes have the necessary failover configured. The tools that you have are pretty basic, and they're not built for like this kind of scale. Micetro, on the other hand, it's a solution that scales enormously. We have some of the largest customers, some of the largest enterprises in the world using our product for DDI. This environment is not one of the biggest ones, but we have 117 networks here. If I click on the DHCP scopes, we can see that these are all the scopes which are in my environment, 31. And I can switch from a tree view to a flat view of the scopes. We can see that they are all here, like all the scopes, and you see the utilization. You also see that there's an authority column here. Make it slightly larger. And most of them have a failover with a couple of exceptions. If I click on the authority column here, we can sort here and see which scopes are not in failover, and these are not. So I can, the top ones here are on a Kia server, and I only have one Kia server in my environment, so I don't have the ability to have failover for those. But for the Windows ones, I can definitely just fix that right away. So I can select the 3 scopes which are not in a failover. Right click here, or click the meatball menu, and add the scopes to a failover. I might have multiple failover relationships, but I only have one, so I'm just going to select the New York failover, confirm and save. And Micetro now has configured these scopes in a failover. So it's really easy to fix these kinds of misconfigurations in the tool just with a couple of clicks. Also, if there's a troubleshooting issue, if an IP address conflict or some name resolution issue or something, it's really easy to just jump to the record that is problematic and do some diagnostics. Especially if you've been using Micetro for a long time, you would gather like the information of like a tracking of the changes in the environment. So you can identify the root cause of a change or an issue. But here is like if I go and just click Control Space on my keyboard, it comes over this here. So search for a zone record range or an IP address, and I type in an IP address. You can see that this guy is free, and I can just go here and I can just really reveal the IP address, and it jumps right immediately to the IP address to show me the IP address. And then I can allocate it, or if there's something wrong with the IP address, I can go here and ping it. I would have the information about if the IP address has been seen on the network and when it was last seen on the network. If it's a scope, is there an issue between the lease name and the DNS name, and so on and so forth.
No, I noticed that when you clicked on it, there was a history option. If someone deletes a record erroneously, is it easy to just go through the history and restore that record in place, or do you have to recreate it by hand?
No, it's easy to do that. So we will be adding a more detailed undo functionality in the product, but there is definitely a way to identify changes, and you see the before and after of the record, and also the IP addresses and networks and so on. And this information can be used to restore the record, but also undo functionality will be added to the application.
Okay.
Do you actually have any way of determining and fixing ambiguity in DHCP or DNS?
We do have that, yes. I mean, there's just so much ambiguity that could arise in a network, like inconsistency between, for example, like a static IP address in a dynamic pool. If you go into a network which is a DHCP like this one here, with the blue is the pool, basically the allocations that the server can do. And if you have an active IP address there without a lease, that's, for example, something which is cause for an alert. And we would get the active IP address from the app information from the router, and we would display that in Maestro. And then for the DHCP server, we know that the DHCP server has no knowledge of the IP address, which means that someone has done the old trick of just hardwiring an IP address on the device and selected just something random IP address.
Okay.
In my environment here, we have some basic information. So I've added all the services into Maestro. What I haven't done is connect to Active Directory, so the Active Directory sites, because I have in the environment we have a few sites, and if I go into, probably the best way to see that is just to go to DNS and go into the Active Directory integrated. So these are all different sites in my environment. So basically some parts of New York. In an Active Directory, you would have different subnets and which are then associated with these sites. And it's pretty critical in AD to make sure that the relationship between subnets and scopes and sites is correctly done. So I can go into the IPAM here and add an Active Directory forest into Men&Mice, into Maestro. So I go here and I do put in some credentials. And now Maestro has reached out to Active Directory and pulled in the site information from AD. Now these are the sites, and we can see, for example, if I click on Bronx, that these networks are associated with Bronx. And hopefully these are scopes, and hopefully none of the scopes are left out. Because if there's a scope defined on the network and is not associated with an AD site, then clients on that network, they will receive services from just randomly from anywhere. And to clean up this information and make sure it's good moving forward, we use Maestro for that. So if I go into the networks section here, click on the DHCP scopes, we can see that there is wow. So Maestro has now pulled in all this information from all the information from the network, from the routers, and we have here like some of the scopes are not in an AD site. We can see that these are not in an AD site, and they are in a failover. And what I can do here from the product is just go here and select a few of them, and I can add them to an AD site through the product. So what happens if I do this here? Put them into the Brooklyn site and hit save. Maestro will reach out to AD and update Active Directory with this information. So now clients that previously had some issues with getting reliable services from a local domain controller will now have the ability to connect to these local domain controllers and get reliable services.
Whenever you say routers, can you expand there on what you mean? That information can be pulled from routers?
Yeah, so basically we use SNMP primarily to pull the like app data and also some network data from the routers to build like a more holistic view of the environment.
Okay,
so,
yeah. Sorry, go on.
No. So basically, what we have seen with our customers is that they might have a spreadsheet or an open source tool or some way to keep track of networks, and there is a discrepancy between what's actually on the network and what's in the spreadsheet. So you might import a spreadsheet and then you realize that you had provisioned from in the spreadsheet some networks which are actually not visible. They're not active on the network, nowhere to be seen, or just have been decommissioned, and the vice versa. So there might be also some networks which are defined on the network, on the routers, are routed, but are not in the spreadsheet.
Okay, and then if a router's configured with, say, a larger summary advertisement for, say, a /16 or /22, but that network is broken up into smaller chunks on the local side, how does that affect being displayed within your system there in terms of scopes, etc.?
Yeah, so we would just fit that in the correct place in the hierarchy. So if we did, let's say we like put an aggregation into and it's going to be pulled into Maestro, we just place all the networks, all the underlying networks will just be placed in the hierarchy in the correct place. So basically similar to